Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of Blue Leadership with your host, Dennis Nair. Dennis is a 26-year law enforcement veteran and retired chief from the state of New York. He's also a proud graduate of the 240th session of the FBI National Academy and the 61st session of the FBI LEDA Command Institute. The Blue Leadership video podcast is brought to you by the nationally ranked Master of Science in Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership Program at the University of San Diego. You can learn more about the LEPSL program at criminaljustice.sandiego.edu. And with that, I'll kick things over to Dennis to introduce our featured guests.
Sarah, thank you. And here we are again. So today's guest is Assistant Chief with the City of San Diego, California Police Department, Bernie Colon. Bernie is a 33-year law enforcement veteran. He is a faculty member here in the University of San Diego's LEPSL program. And he has his Master of Public Administration degree, a graduate of Session 265 of the FBI National Academy. Near and dear to him is he's a liaison with the Special Olympics of Southern California, which is really important. And he's going to talk a little bit about some of his other youth engagements activities. Lots more I could add, but without further ado, Chief Colon, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Dennis. It's my honor.
I'm trying to shift a little bit in some of these to personalize these podcasts. And one of the things I want to start off with is asking you, you're 33 years in law enforcement. That's a long time. You've seen a lot of changes. You're at the top of the echelon. What is it that inspired you originally to become a police officer?
Yeah, so it's a different road. I went to school. I grew up in Chicago, and then I moved out here to San Diego to play a little baseball at San Diego State. And then I went to school for mechanical engineering. And I had gone through about 3.5, 4 years. And I realized that I'd always wanted to design cars, and especially Corvettes. I'm a big car guy. It's my hobby on the side. And I realized that would be tying me behind a desk. And then I've gone on a couple of ride-alongs, and I realized that's where my passion was at. I love being outdoors. You're helping people, and at the same time, you're seeing your immediate the help that you're giving. And growing up in Chicago with I'm part Puerto Rican, so I grew up on not the nice side of town, let's just say that. And so I realized that, we needed a lot of help, a lot of my relatives and stuff. And so this was a great opportunity for me to be out here. I had never been to San Diego before. So once you come here, you never want to go back. So that made it quick and easy. So that's what kind of got me started. And I have never regretted it a single day in my life. I actually changed or pivoted my master or my undergraduate degree, and then obviously my master's degree towards policing and public administration. And again, I've been very fortunate and blessed to have the opportunity to rise in the ranks. And I am very, very proud, not only of San Diego PD, but of being a police officer, period. I think especially with the stuff that we're going through right now, I do have 3 stepsons, and I can understand it's a totally different perspective now than when you and I started, a little bit different. But at the same time, without us out there, you can only imagine the world we'd be leaving to our kids. And so that's why I keep fighting with it, and I keep pushing. And again, being lucky to kind of climb the ladder a little bit, I now have more input and influence. Although sometimes the mayor and the chief probably don't like that, I do have the opportunity to kind of give the devil's advocate and make sure we're still out there keeping a safe and comfortable environment for everybody.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure it really helps them form their decisions. And interesting, as you're saying, designing cars, that's obviously something that involves a lot of creativity and critical thinking. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine you can just shift that and you're applying creativity and critical thinking to your daily role.
Yeah, so you'd be surprised. I mean, you talk about a lot of different things that we've learned in all the classes we've gone to. We talked about the National Academy and stuff like that. And you may learn, like Kevin Gilmartin talks about, we'll talk about the book later, but it's how to balance things. And it's not only at work, but it's also take it to your home life. And like you said, the engineering part of it's a matter of critical thinking about, okay, here's what the root problem is, versus just responding to call after call after call. Let's figure out why we keep going back to that call, and then we can stop that. Because as you know, right now, staffing is super low, and so we're trying to work smarter, not harder. And sometimes it's a matter of, okay, let's take a deep dive and figure out the cause of this problem so that we can stop having to respond and send officers, so that our lack of staffing does not result in a lack of enforcement.
Yeah, and in that short, description, I'm hearing like things from our data fluency course, things from our organizational theory course, things from our leadership course. In that small snippet, there's just a whole bunch of stuff from Lepsel pouring out that I'm sure is highly valuable.
Yeah, so and when they first came to me with Lepsel and the concept of it, and asked me to join the team, and I was just talking before the podcast that we're seeing more and more people part of it, and I really think it's helped change the way people think, these leaders think, because now they're not just thinking about what they've learned in their careers, but they're not only learning other people's careers, but across the nation. So what may be working in Florida may be a good idea for us to use in California, or in Ithaca, it may be something totally different. However, I can use part of your idea because I never thought of that, and it's been successful for you. Or even more important, if it hasn't been successful, I know not to spend or waste the time and effort going down that road. And it's really helped. And I think a big part of that is because we're professionals on the same path, we're very critical and we think aloud and we think together. So if we see a problem, hey, why don't you try this? How about if you tweak that? And we kind of think out loud to solve the problem, and we work together.
For sure. It's a synergy to the truest definition.
Yeah.
And, going into what your specialties or what you're known for, you have great recognition for your work with youth. And we talked a little bit about the Special Olympics, but I'd love for you to expand on that. But youth and the issues of homelessness and community engagement. And those are really, really important, because if you don't have the community on your side, there's uphill battles. And obviously the youth are the future, and the homelessness issue is a challenge, and probably your state has it more difficult than maybe anywhere else in the country. Can you just talk a little bit about what you do for those areas and that's gained you such recognition?
Sure, of course. Yeah. So community engagement to me is probably the most important thing that's out there. And the reason being is when I teach classes in person, I always try and explain to people that you take whatever big stadium you go to for New York, and maybe Giant Stadium or Yankee Stadium, whatever you've gone to, and you explain the way we're outnumbered for police officers. Like we have Petco Park here, and let's say it holds 50,000. So if I took the number of officers we have per 1,000, I would have to say we'd have 5 officers on the pitching mound and a full stadium of 50,000 people. And then I always tell the students, I say, okay, stop and think. Let's say we have a power outage or something happens and we can't play the game. So the 5 of you get to tell the 50,000 of them that they just paid for nothing and they have to go home, and they've been waiting for this game all year. So what is the chances of your success? And they're like, well, I'm going to get killed. I'm not going to make it. And it was like, well, if you've developed a good reputation with that community and you can take the time to explain to them what happened, it'll be much easier for you. And then they can come back and come to a different game next week. And that's, to me, that's that investment of that bank account. I always call it like a bank account. If you can be letting them see that you're being honest and transparent, and that community involvement, you're making those deposits so they trust you. So when it does come time to a critical incident, or we have the civil unrest, or like we had a blackout probably 10 years ago where the power went out. And so San Diego, rather than like when I grew up in Chicago, a blackout means looting. Here in San Diego, it meant everybody coming out and having neighborhood barbecues. And they literally, there's like, hey, as long as I get gas in my tank, I'll sit here and wait for it to be fixed. In Chicago, that's an opportunity where it goes the other way. And if there's anybody on here from Chicago, I apologize. But so that is to me the perfect example of community engagement. And as far to that point, like you had said, I'm very involved with Special Olympics because those are the truest, most sincere people that it's being a police officer for 33 and a half years. You see a lot of the worst. I mean, people don't call us to say, hey, come over to my kid's birthday party. They usually come because my kid just got shot, or I just got, sexually assaulted or something like that. So we all need to have that balance. We need to have some positives in our life, some family time, hobbies or whatever to help us cope with the negativity. And so when I do Special Olympics, those kids are so genuine and sincere. And they're not just kids, there's adults. It's the whole, thing. So I've been involved with that probably 20 years. I've played Santa Claus for them at the schools. I'm in charge of the torch run here in Southern California. And I'm very, very proud of that. And my daughter, I have 2 daughters, and both of them are teaching with special ed as part of their what they're focused on. And to me, it recharges me. You know, it takes a lot of energy, but at the same time, it really makes me be grateful for what I have, because you see what other people are going through. And you know, it's nice to be surrounded by people who genuinely, there's no filter, they truly care. My daughters, like I said, I coached them all the way from 5 years old up to high school for softball. Like I said, I played baseball. So I think it's important to always have that balance, the work and home balance. In fact, I did my master's thesis on that. Otherwise, we let things kind of weigh on us a lot, and it can be negative. But the job is such a great job. And I really think now, if I would have had Lepsel back when I was coming up, I think I would have been much more effective, because there's so many. It wouldn't just be what I knew; it would be what 500 other people knew and experienced. So my talents would have been much better.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And then the other part of that triad is you do a lot with the homelessness population. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the challenges you have there and how you're meeting them?
So yeah, let's start out. So my current title is the Neighborhood Policing Assistant Chief. So I do have, that is like the main function of my teams. In San Diego, although we're very, very innovative and creative in our thought, we're also very, what's the right word? They're not enforcement minded. They're very, you know, how can we help? And what happens is we're starting to see our numbers have increased. If you've been to San Diego recently, you've seen how that's changed. But what we're starting to see is a lot of people coming from out of state or out of the city, out of the county area, because they know that San Diego will take care of you. They're not enforcement minded. And it's gone from, I bet you we've probably tripled the number of homeless that we have seen on the streets. And what that's turning into is our enforcement ability, our enforcement arm, especially with COVID, because the jails minimize their capacities. It's really made it tough for us. So we're trying to find that balance with the mayor and the politicians down here about, okay, let's try and give them the resources, but at the same time, let's make sure that the people who live in the community can feel safe and they won't have to be walking in the streets because the sidewalks are covered with tents and so forth. So we've really worked together to come up with some very creative programs to incentivize people to take resources. And we're working hard to try and look at other best practices, although I think San Diego's pretty innovative that way. It's just our numbers are so big right now that there's far more people that are unhoused than we have housing. And especially in San Diego, where you have the housing prices are so high and the rents are so high. But we are working on that end. It's just, it's a challenge for everybody. The good thing is that it's not just us. It's not like we're doing something wrong. Everybody's running into it. It's just a matter of what angle they're going to take towards that. And it's what used to be enforcement minded is now more providing resources and outreach.
Yeah, and you could just tell, obviously, from your personality that you get things done through people in your team. And what do you think that in those areas, whether, and I think I get the listeners and viewers also get a good understanding from, you know, the youth engagement, and, you know, I thought that was great example with the community engagement and how you have barbecues versus looting and the challenges with the homelessness, but that you're optimistic that you'll be able to meet those. What do you think is your best or your greatest achievement that has the most meaning to you in those areas?
I think the greatest meaning to me is when I can go into some places. Again, I'm from Chicago. I'm Puerto Rican, so I have a thick skin, but I can walk downtown into the biggest encampment, and I can walk in there not with so much like confidence, but they trust me. And I think that my teams have been really good about, they know who the players are. And the way we break it down for the homeless, and I think this is very important. I don't know if it's the same across for everybody, but we have 3 different types. You have the first type where the people who had a run-in with like they got laid off or something like that, temporarily unhoused, but they really want to get out of there. I mean, they really, truly want to get back on their feet. You have the people who have mental issues who don't know the difference. And it used to be we had state hospitals where you could just send them to a state hospital. We don't have that anymore. So we're working on conservatorship laws and so forth. So that's the second type. The third type are the people who don't want help. They're the ones who are victimizing the other ones. And they're the ones who, when we offer shelters, they'll say no to it because they don't want to have to stay clean. They don't want to have to be in by 9 o'clock. They don't want all the rules that come with it. And so we do a lot of education to the community on that. We do a lot of education to the advocates on that. And we tell them, hey, tell us how we can help. Because, it's very unique. And I'm not sure what it's like out in the different cities across the states, but a lot of the homeless issues are not enforcement issues, which are police officers are there to enforce the law, and keep the safety. But what happens is police officers are there 24 hours a day. Police officers are the things that get things done. We're A-type personalities. We don't just sit back and think of 15 meetings on how to get stuff done. We get out there and get it done. And so we become, the end all be all. And sometimes we're asked to do things. I know when I became a police officer, I don't remember anything about how to be, a homeless advocate or how to, but you just got to adapt and overcome. And that's what we do really well. So I'm very proud of the fact that I can sit down, because I have to speak both ways. I have to speak to the community and explain what we're doing. And I have to speak to the officers who are frustrated that why aren't we just putting handcuffs and taking them away, and explain to them why what we're doing. So you got to be the jack of all trades on that. As far as the youth engagement, I really strongly think that, number one, I love sports. And I think that's a great avenue to get people, keep them busy so they're not getting into the gangs and getting in trouble and stuff like that. So I'm big into that. And I also think it teaches confidence. I know for a fact my daughters were more introverted. And then by going to sports and by doing things like that, they have that confidence get built up. And that's one thing. It really charges me when I see even officers, because I'm sure we've all seen the first day of the academy when you have a bunch of meek and timid faces, and then hopefully you're trying, hey, this person's got really good interpersonal skills. So I really want to work with them on that and let them, give them the confidence of it. And I love it when people pass me up on promotions. One of probably our next chief, I was his first sergeant. And I'm very proud of the fact that, hey, you know what? He's done really well. And I love to see that. And so when I see the Lepsel people, hey, I got promoted or whatever's going on, that's great. And I also think that when you have those people, because we all know most of us are going through this as adults, where we have kids, we have bills, we have rotating shifts, that sometimes I just that little edge of like, hey, don't drop out, keep pushing. You're almost there. Just put something down. Let's work with it. And I think that really helps motivate those people, because even though it's hard to get done and through, when it's done, the payoff is 10 times better than what you could have expected. So I try and motivate people to finish that.
Yeah, I agree fully on those. And I want to circle back. You were talking about, the reservoir of trust you built, and you can go into those encampments. And in New York, we had the same thing, same 3 different scenarios: those who didn't want to be there, those who didn't know the difference, and those who, no matter what you gave, that's what they wanted. That was their choice.
Yeah.
So now we go back to 2020 and the nation's civil unrest in big cities, small cities, everything in between. Your work with the community engagement and with the youth in your community, and obviously being a known quantity within the homeless encampments, did that play a role in any of the civil unrest, and did it help? And if it did, in what ways do you think it had value?
So I truly do believe. So what I would say happened is it was a perfect storm, because I was also part of the advantage, I guess, or disadvantage of 33 and a half years of work is you have a lot of different jobs. You develop a lot of different areas. So probably about 20 years ago, I was in charge of our medical assistance unit. And so when COVID came out, hey, Bernie, you know a little bit about medical. And then kind of, that became a collateral duty, because I think what you ran into is a two-edged sword. You had COVID, which scared the hell out of the officers. They thought every house they were going into, so I was able to sit down and explain, okay, so you're covered under medical. So if you do get COVID, this is what happens. Nobody knew what COVID was. They didn't know if it was a death sentence. They didn't know if it was just a common cold or anything. So that was one thing. Then you have people who are not at work, so they're at home. So they're watching social media now, and they're becoming out there. And that's where the civil unrest, I think, really took off. And we all know that 95% of our job deals with 5% of the public. And so those 5% were like, hey, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to go out and protest. I'm going to go do whatever. And they're the loud minority. The majority of the people were afraid to go out and confront them. So when we would be proactive and go out to community meetings, which was tough because of COVID, but by phone calls and so forth, we would really push to them. They would always say, what can we do to help you? We really believe in you. I'm like, okay, well, then stand up for us. When the media comes out, say something. And a lot of them were afraid because they were business owners and so forth that felt they would feel the wrath of it when that happened. You know, their businesses would be, you know, taken down or whatever. So that was, again, I think the main thing is the outreach that we had, the friendships or the partnerships that we had before, we had to rely on that. But had you told me in 2020 that within a matter of weeks, we'd shut down the nation, we'd have people doing protests, law enforcement would be called under the carpet, you know, I never would have believed that would have happened in 2 or 3 weeks. And literally that's what happened in 2 or 3 weeks. You know, and so it's what the positives that have come out of it is Zoom meetings and stuff like that, because now I can be much more efficient and I don't have to jump in my car and drive everywhere. But the main thing that concerns me is I don't want to become a society where we do everything through text or we do everything through emails. I love being in person. Lepsel, the one thing I like about it is I can do videos like this and teach the class. I could still be there, but I'm reaching across the nation versus just being, you know, the 20 or 30 students in one classroom. So I'm not sure if that really helped answer your question, but if it didn't, ask more.
Yeah, no, I did. I think it did. We went off a little, but it circled back to basically the reservoir of trust is really it. And you know, I did a recent interview as a leadership-based one, and we just basically the way to say it is we were all building an airplane mid-flight and trying to do something in which there was no playbook. And but I feel that all the work you've done by being known in that community, it seems, and the work you've done had just built itself that business owners could come to you and they could express what their problems were. So correct me if I'm wrong. Am I understanding correctly that the value in that year of 2020, which again, like you said, nobody could have ever predicted, having those relationships, having those face-to-faces, even though you couldn't really engage at the time, paid off both with your officers and in dealing with the challenges in the community?
Yeah, I would say that 100%. And let me touch back on a couple of things. So I think it was huge is that what's tough is you stop and think about it when we started. We didn't have, so whatever happened in Ithaca, I wouldn't find out about unless I read in the paper or something. Well, now with social media, we're paying the price for things that happen in Minneapolis and Atlanta and who knows where. And it's not been vetted. So a lot of times what's put on social media may or may not be 100% true, or you always ask, okay, what's the other half of the story? But once the version's gotten out there and caught fire, I mean, you're playing firefighter more than you are a police officer. So it's tough. But I think what a lot of departments, when civil unrest happened, some people panicked and they became, okay, we got to go push back with force. And that's not the right way to do it all the time. We need to be safe and have force, but we can't be pushing back on everything. We can't make this square peg fit in every round hole. So it's a matter of thinking outside the box and looking both ways. We have to be concerned what the community believes and what they see, but we can't forget about our officers, because I think of anything, you stop and think now about the people who have left the department, not for other departments, but just left law enforcement in general because they don't feel valued anymore. And so that was, you know, we were worried about recruitment and so forth. We were able to keep academies coming, but we also stopped. San Diego's one of the leaders in wellness as far as making sure and taking our own temperatures. You know, 3 times as many officers take their own lives as that die in the line of duty every year. Yet we don't think about it that way. And I'm not saying we have to get soft at all. We can still be good, great officers, very firm, but we need to make sure we have the hobbies and that everybody's checked off okay, everybody's physical part. Go get your doctor's appointments, because people sometimes let that go. And I mean, trust me, I wasn't this big when I started the academy. I was about probably 100 pounds less. But, you know, I make sure to balance that. And that's one thing that the civil unrest, and that's where the leadership comes into, because the young guys coming on and women, they're just out there because they want to, you know, they became a cop because they're A-type personalities. They want to do something. where we have to make sure that they're in here for the marathon run, not the little sprint. And, today's the Boston Marathon, so it's a perfect, tie into that. But it's, and that's where we as leaders really need to make sure we're not only taking our own temperature, but we're also making sure everybody else is taking their temperature behind us. That's one thing we have to do.
Yeah, I agree. And, and that's why, again, my question next that I was going to ask you is, what course do you enjoy teaching the most in Lepsel? And I'm going to ask you why. And, in Lepsel, there's certain courses, that really just touch on all these areas that we're talking about in great detail, and the contemporary issues, where you really have a whole module on wellness, because you're right. How can you function and keep others safe and protected if you're not keeping yourself well? And it's a trauma-filled profession just by what you see, and by, like you said at the beginning, you're not called to come to the child's birthday party. You're called when there's a problem at that birthday party. And that's all day, every day. So with that, you've been teaching, I should have said this at the beginning, since 1996. So you have many, many years as an educator.
That just means I'm old. Yeah.
Well, and it also means you have a lot of experience to share. And so you've taught quite a deal of courses for the Lepsel program. What course do you enjoy teaching the most, and why?
I think what I really enjoy teaching is the community engagement and community involvement, is because when we get these newer officers who they think police work is about crime, solving the crime, which I love. I did investigations for years. I was a hostage negotiator for 13 years. Loved that. I was a Metro Arson Strike team. So I had the bomb squad and fire investigations. Loved that part of it. But if we don't stick to the community engagement and making those partnerships and getting that going on, sometimes I think you see the light turn on some of these officers. Like, I can still go out and do investigations, but if I have a good relationship with my business owners, that's how I get the videos, or that's how I get, because one thing San Diego is dealing with right now is that we had the streetlight cameras, and we lost that because with the civil unrest, people were very anti-police, and anything they could do to kind of, they felt we were being big brother. But now we're starting to get the traction back because you're starting to see crime creep up. And so if we could have that community engagement and really get them to support us, then it gives us more tools so we can be more efficient and better officers. And then trust me, I mean, that's how I sell it to the detectives. Like narcotics detectives, we have what they call the ghost gun team, which is like a new thing going on out here. We started about a year and a half ago when I was in investigation, or 2.5 years ago when I was in investigations, and it's really taken off. But to explain to those guys who just want to do warrants and arrest people, hey, you need to go out and explain it to the community so they support it, so we can get the grant money so that we can make this bigger and more effective. So it's I love that part because it really, takes some really energetic and good officers and helps make them, kind of fine tunes them and hones them for, because, you have detectives and officers who love it. But if they're thinking about management and going up, they have to think outside. They have to think of the political aspirations and political pressures that come into it. And if we can explain that to them and get the community involvement, they'll know how, here's the answer I want to get to, but I may have to take a diverted path to get there.
So when you're teaching the course, what do you get back in feedback from the discussion boards? Because I'm sure the students benefit greatly from the feedback that you can provide.
Yeah, so a lot of times I'll use one student's feedback. Hey, I saw this plan over here. What if you did this? How about that? Or that's a great idea. What do you think would happen if? Because I always answer my with a question. I always end with a question. And sometimes that frustrates the students because they're like, I just answered the question. But sometimes I think at that, my evals at the end, hey, he really dug deep. He made me think outside the box, because it's not a matter of getting the right answer all the time. It's a matter of understanding it, because that way, if I only teach you the answer, then you'll do great every time that question's asked. But if the question's different, but you understand the concept, you can customize it to whatever works for you. And as you and I were talking about before the podcast, what may work in Gurnee, Illinois, where I grew up, is totally different than what works in San Diego. But if I understand the concept of what worked, I can, manipulate it or customize it to what I need to out here.
Yeah, that Socratic method, that critical thinking, it's all key. And I feel like you gave a really good explanation of how you build that right in your courses.
Yours just sounds better because you use big words. I just use a small, simple words.
Well, the fact that you make your students give you evaluations that says that you're hitting the nail right on the head. And so, Chief, question for you.
Bernie, please call me Bernie.
Bernie, question for you. What keeps you still motivated? I mean, anyone watching this is going to know that this is a person, again, you're at the highest echelon in your organization. You're very affable and approachable, and that's something that's intrinsic. So what is it that keeps you still motivated 33 and a third years later?
I think it's a matter of, I still see that we're doing good. And over the last couple of years where a lot of people said, hey, I'm tying it up, I don't want to go out on a negative note and so forth. I look at it as I need to be here to make sure that my kids and my grandkids, because we could all just give up and let, the other side take over, but that's not helping anybody. And the fact of, like I said, I've been very gifted and lucky, fortunate, however you want to call it, that I have an opportunity to have some input on a lot of these decisions. I look at it as it's kind of like my duty. And when things go right, I'm very happy that I stayed. When things go wrong, I'm stubborn. And so I just look, okay, I got to come back and try this again. And that's one thing. Too bad my chief's not around the corner, but he'll tell you I'm the devil's advocate a lot of times. Like, hey, what if we did this? How about if we did? And I don't give up. But it's a great job. And I look at the camera when I say this. I had no idea I'd be a police officer. I'm the only one in my family, predecessors and so forth. But I love this job. I truly love this job. And I kind of wish I would have felt this way when I was younger, so I could have really pounded forward on it. But, I had baseball and engineering and all that other stuff that went into it. But I could not think of a better career where I hope my kids are proud. I hope that I make a difference. And I love teaching and I love passing that on, because everybody who's in law enforcement has the same opportunities I have, every single person. And there's a lot more criticism, I guess you'd say, of police work right now, but there's also a lot more technology. I mean, back when I was in, we used to handwrite reports. And if you made a mistake, you started over. And, I remember sometimes the papers would crack because there's so much whiteout. Or, we didn't have the ability. We'd walk into buildings with a brick as our microphone, and we wouldn't know if it would work. It was a better force option than it was a communication device, where now we have so much more. We have intelligence-led policing. We have programs like LEPSL, where I'm learning about stuff from all over the world or all over the United States versus, and also now you just type something in on your computer and you have the answer. We didn't have Google. We had, figure it out, make a phone call, and do that. So this is a great, although it seems challenging, it's a great opportunity. And I know a lot of agencies across the United States are very young. I want to say that about 70% of our patrol staff has less than 5 years on. So you have that big gap of senior people like myself, and then you have people who have less than 5 years on. There's a big gap in the middle. But what that means to me is opportunity for the bottom group who has the 5 years or less. But we just got to keep them motivated and keep them going.
Well, I think it's pretty evident to see that that's not ever going to be an issue for you. And and I have to ask, so what do you want your legacy to be? Again, when you invest so much time, energy, a lifetime of work, what would you like your legacy to be when you do decide to start a new chapter?
Yeah, so there's no more chapters in this book. I have 33 and a half years, and we have what they call the drop program. I've entered the drop program, so I have 4.5 years left of that. And at that time, I plan on being a great grandfather, restoring some cars that I've bought that I haven't touched, and just enjoying life, but also always being a tool for the people who are behind. What I want my legacy to be is that I did it the right way, and that I truly cared. I think there's times where we go into our staff, meetings. Every week we have a meeting with all the captains. And so my point of that is that I want to hear what the patrols are saying. And so when I go to, I may go to graveyard lineup in shorts because I'm getting gas at the same time. I go, hey, I'm here, I might as well swing in. And a lot of times people are like, oh my God, you didn't look professional. But the ones who really see it are the ones that, hey, you know what? That chief took the time to stop in and ask questions. And once a week we have what they call advanced officer training. and the officers can ask, they get a chance to talk to a chief, whoever that may be. And when I do it, I literally sit down. I say, I'm not leaving until every question's answered. You may not like the answer, or I may have to say, I'll get back to you because I don't know the answer, but there's nothing I'm going to hide from you. And I think if we can get that and really believe in that, because as you know, as being a chief, sometimes you know what the answer is, but the mayor's going to get mad at you for answering it. But that's where I think I've done a pretty good job of giving that answer in a professional enough way where the patrol understands it. And when the mayor gets mad that I answered that way, I can explain to the mayor, well, sir, this is what their concern is. What would you rather I say? This is the truth. When sometimes it becomes like it's a policy issue. Okay, well, who makes the policy? Or I may sit down and say, hey, this is what the policy is, but here's why he made that decision, and take the time to explain. But when we go back to that whole, you called it the reservoir, which I think is a great way of saying it, but I call it my bank account. So there's times like at lineups and when we're not in civil unrest where I can really sit down and say, here's where we're going, here's the issues. We're talking about a beard policy right now in San Diego. And to sit down and just talk to people about the whole beards and positives and negatives and what kind of thought process, and here's the steps we have to go to get things done, patrol really appreciates that. So when we do have our civil unrest and I say, I need you on that line going that way right now, there's no questions asked, because they realize, hey, you know what? If Bernie's asking me to do it, he's never screwed me over in the past. So I'm gonna believe him. I'll ask questions later. If you don't have that vested account or that money deposited in there, then you can't go on an overdraft. You got to have that opportunity, and I think that's where some of our young leaders right now are so worried about clearing the board on calls, or just because I said so, or because I got these stripes or I got these bars. They're losing it. They're missing that opportunity to really develop that credibility and those deposits where, when it comes time, they may sit back and let you suffer a little bit before them stepping up. Whereas if you've gone out of your way while you can, then, you get that opportunity when you need them. Does that make sense?
It makes tremendous sense. It's a true description of what leadership is all about. You're getting people to do what you need them to do, but you're not dragging them along, and they're doing it because they want to do it, because they trust you and you're there for them. You're approachable, you're visible. It's huge. Yeah, that's if the listeners and viewers just take that little piece of it, it'll work wonders for everyone. I want to kind of tie this into, every leader, has a source they draw from. I heard you mention Kevin Gilmartin. I think some of our listeners are going to know what book you're going to refer to, but I want to ask you, any books or podcasts that you can recommend for people who want to become better leaders or improve whatever their skill set is?
Yeah, so I understand Chief Dennis Naylor has this great podcast you should watch. It'll help develop you for stuff like this. So seriously, the Kevin Gilmartin thing, I there's all those books you've gone to. When I went to Situational Leadership Institute in California, SLI, I've gone to different management classes and stuff. And when you ask my experiences, I didn't put them down because there's a lot of classes you went to. The FBI really stands out, but I really think what I would like to do for everybody who's out there, the reason I like emotional survival so much is because it really makes sure you balance yourself. Because we have way too many officers that put so much in there. They're great officers, but at the expense of their families, at the expense of their health, the expense of, when we leave this department, somebody's going to backfill us. And it doesn't mean do less. It means do a great job, leave with a great, history of what you've done. But at the same time, make sure you get just as many years of your retirement as you did in your service. And I think that is a true, I can't tell you how important that is to me. And not only for myself, but my coworkers and everybody else, because it's truly, again, when I used to teach this in person at the academy, I would draw a wheel on the board and I'd say, okay, so you have, your work, you have your family, you have sports, you have hobbies, you have religion, and a couple other things. Well, I'm just telling you right now that as you get going, life gets busy, so you got to lose one of them. And then you take one thing off. Okay, now just life got busier, you had another baby, whatever, take another one off. And you see people taking things off like religion, hobbies, working out, but they never take off work. It gets down to the end where they have, your family or work. Which one are you going to do? And then sometimes the light clicks on for them before they get there. But a lot of times I'm like, okay, so let me get this right. You're going to give up everything for work. You don't control work. You control your family, you control your health, but you're so focused on the job, which I love this job. I truly do. But you have to be balanced so that you can recharge yourself so you can be good to give to the job. If you're empty yourself, then you have nothing to give. And it's the same thing. And again, like I told you before, a lot of these lessons that I've learned about work go into the life as well. So like when I raise my kids, if I'm not in a good place, I can't be good and supportive to them. And I try and explain to them, hey, look, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't be a good friend, or you can't be a good student, or whatever. And the same thing goes for all of our officers. I always explain to them, hey, look, you're going to be more short-wicked or quick to snap if you're not healthy and in a good place yourself, which is only going to get you in IA. It's only going to get you in trouble. There's not a positive to that. So it's important that we have those balances. Now, granted, sometimes, we get the ups and downs with work or home or whatever's going on, but that's where I think the wellness comes in. And again, not to be soft, but to say it's okay to reach out to somebody and say, hey, look, I'm having an off day. Can I king up with somebody, which for us is a 2-person car, or something like that to make sure you take care of yourself. Or I can't tell you how many years I had so many hours on the books that I was no longer accruing because I had maxed out. Well, I learned to start taking vacations so that I can recharge my batteries and that I can, spend some time with my wife and my kids. And because before you know it, they're grown and they're gone. And, you're wishing you had that time, so so that would be, that's the one book that really stands out to me. There are a ton of leadership books. I think the more reading you can do, or the more, now you have audio books and you have movies and stuff or podcasts, take in as much as you can. And just like when you had, when you were in training, you had an FTO, you had 5 or 6 different FTOs. You like this about this one, like this about this one, what works best for you. And then you piece together what you do, but never forget to pass that forward. All the learning you've done, help the next person learn so they don't have to make the same mistakes you did. And that's something that, that's LEPSL again is a great opportunity like that, because you get to learn from 30 or 40 students each time you do it about what they've done, what's worked for them, what's not, to make you more efficient.
Yeah. And how cool is that too, as you and I can be teaching a course, but at the same time, we're still learning.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I feel like I could talk for another hour here, but Bernie Colon, Assistant Chief of the San Diego Police Department. This was a great podcast. I know Sarah's going to come in and close us out. I think we really covered a lot on leadership and the important parts of the job, which is the wellness and the community engagement and, just obviously staying motivated and all these things. Super informative. I'm sure that whoever didn't have the chance to tune in will have a chance once it's on our YouTube channel. But I know you like to be called Bernie, but I say, Chief, thank you for your time and wisdom. Very, very much appreciated.
Absolutely. No problem. Just remember this October is IACP in San Diego. If any of you are watching, you're going to be in town, please look me up.
Great. Thank you both so much for your time today. And to our viewers, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to meet the law enforcement heroes and leaders who are a part of the MS LEPSL family. If you would like to watch previous episodes of Blue Leadership, you can find them on the video tab of our Facebook page or by searching USD Blue Leadership on YouTube. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.